Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation here in Spain, day 332. I think it is. And just when you think the situation is getting better and the health crisis begins to recede, the authorities start telling us about a possible fourth wave. But more about that in just a moment. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. Thanks to people that supported the channel through a donation. You can see your name here. Thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patron on Patreon for your support. Now let's get into the news, and although it does appear that we have got over the third wave of the coronavirus here in Spain, the health data is still not good. As we can see here, the Spanish Health Ministry have reported more than 47,000 coronavirus infections and 909 COVID deaths over the weekend. The overall incidence rate of cases continues to fall across Spain, but the authorities are warning that people should not drop their guard with a possible fourth wave on the way. The third wave of the coronavirus in Spain is having a major effect on the number of COVID-19 fatalities. After the incidence shot up, followed by hospital admissions and intensive care unit patients, the curve of the number of patients dying after testing positive for the disease is on the rise. On Monday, the Health Ministry reported 909 deaths in figures that cover Friday, Saturday and Sunday. This is the highest weekend number since the first wave of the health crisis last spring. So COVID-related deaths unfortunately still very high, and as we saw there, the highest numbers since last spring. And as we saw briefly in that article, talk of a fourth wave. So where is talk of a possible fourth wave coming from? If you guessed Fernando Simon, you would be right. And as we can see here, he believes that there may be a fourth wave, but it will be smaller and slower. If there is a fourth wave, there will be more immune people, says the director of the Centre of Health Alerts and Emergencies, Fernando Simon. If there is a fourth wave, there are going to be more immune people. Each week that passes, there are 400,000 people who have received at least one dose of the vaccine. The probability that a next wave will be very fast is less and less. It is likely that we will have a smaller size wave and much slower, which gives us room to take action, he argued. So thank goodness for that. A fourth wave possibly on the way, but it's going to be smaller and slower, which will give authorities room to take action. Now, anybody here in Spain who has tried to get an appointment to see their local doctor in recent times would know that it is very, very difficult to do so. And the main reason for this is because the pandemic has plunged primary care into permanent saturation. Professionals warn of overflowing schedules and lack of resources to assume workloads. Doctors and nurses say they are exhausted and admit that the pressure of care is taking a toll on their mental health. So primary healthcare workers, they're exhausted, the pandemic affecting their mental health, and the pandemic really taking its toll on the primary healthcare system here in Spain. To put the health crisis here in perspective, we only have to read articles like this one that there have been 1 million infections since the 6th of January. And if the measures are relaxed, we will reach the 4 million mark in spring. Spain will reach 3 million cases today after having exceeded 2 million on January the 7th. If the new variants become dominant, it will be even worse, experts warn. So 4 million possible infections by spring. We went from 2 million to 3 million in the space of a month. So it's unbelievable just how fast this thing moves if you let it spread. However, as we know, here in Europe and around the world, our hopes to defeat the virus lie in the success of vaccination plans. As we know, the AstraZeneca vaccine is now in Spain. And as we can see here, the communities around the country have started inoculating the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine, and they're asking the question, who will they give it to? However, the health department here in Spain has not yet established which groups between the ages of 18 and 55 years of age, which groups between the ages of 18 and 55 should be vaccinated, but they are already beginning to make decisions. Catalonia begins today its plan to immunise pharmacists, Andalusia will begin with second-line health workers, and in Castilla-La Mancha they're talking about firefighters and policemen. And if we have a look at this graph of the percentage of the population that has already been vaccinated, we can see that we are currently at 2.79% of the population. And we are slowly working our way towards that 70% target, but it still seems a long way off. Now let's have a look at the health data around the country by looking at a map of the country as a whole and various autonomous communities. We'll start off here with the country as a whole, and we can see that the risk level is still extreme. The total amount of cases, as we mentioned before, about to hit the 3 million mark. The accumulated incidence rate for the last 14 days now down to 667. There have been 1,580 COVID-related deaths in the last 7 days. There are currently 27,739 people hospitalised with COVID around the country, and there are 4,732 people in ICUs with COVID-19. Andalusia now, we can see that the risk level there is also extreme. The accumulated incidence rate 780. There have been 260 COVID-related deaths in the last 7 days. There are 4,540 people currently hospitalized in Andalusia with COVID, and there are 719 people in ICUs, which is 37% of all ICUs in that autonomous community. And finally, Valencia, we can see that the risk level there is also extreme. The total amount of cases, the accumulated incidence rate now below the 1,000 mark at 994. There have been 316 COVID-related deaths in the last 7 days. There are currently 3,883 people hospitalized in the Valencian community with COVID, and there are 746 people in ICUs with COVID, which is still quite high. And we can see there that it's almost 59% of all ICUs in that autonomous community. Now, there's various talk around the country about restrictions being extended. A lot of the restrictions that were put in place in January were due to expire this week, but some autonomous communities have decided to extend those restrictions. And Spain's border with Portugal is also going to stay closed longer than was first thought. We can see here that Spain is going to extend border controls with Portugal until March the 1st. This extension has been reflected in the order published this Tuesday in the official State Gazette, which enters into force one day before the end of the order that established border controls to try to contain the expansion of COVID-19. So unnecessary travel between those two countries prohibited for another 20 days. Now, the diplomatic row between Spain and Russia has taken a new twist. We saw how the European Foreign Minister last week went to Russia and criticised their democracy by saying that the opposition leader shouldn't be in prison, and Russia hit back by saying that maybe Spain should look at its own democracy and the way they treat politicians. One of Spain's key politicians and bigwig in the coalition government, Pablo Iglesias, has stepped into the argument and given his opinion on the Catalan process prisoners. There is no situation of full political and democratic normality in Spain, he says. The second vice president of the government, Pablo Iglesias, assured this Monday that in Spain there is no situation of full political and democratic normality. When the leaders of the two parties that govern Catalonia, one is in prison and the other is in Brussels, he said in reference to Oriol Junqueras and Carles Puigdemont. So Mr. Iglesias there stepping into the debate, criticising Spain's democracy and going to show that you should be careful when you start throwing stones at glass houses. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from recent videos. One here from David. Hi Stuart, only just found your channel and you intimated tonight that you were planning to give it up after 100 days. I'm not sure how you can do that now. 40-odd thousand people can't be wrong. My wife and I have been resident in Spain for 20 years, tax resident as well. Is it not time that all of us expats should be given the right to vote in national elections? I was always led to believe that taxation without representation went out in the dark ages. Thank you for giving us a great channel. Cheers, David. Yeah, David, thanks for the comment, and I agree with you. I think we should be given the right to vote, considering that we pay taxes in this country and we are virtually permanent residents. The fact that we don't take out Spanish nationality shouldn't be an issue, in my opinion, but according to politicians, it is. Citizens from other EU countries that reside here in Spain are allowed to take part in some of the democratic process. I believe they're allowed to vote in local elections, but not at a national level, and I don't think they can vote in regional elections either. So what's going on? If you live in the country and you pay taxes, like you mentioned here, I think we should have the right to vote. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. One here from Tessa. Hi Stuart, any news on the travel restrictions between autonomous communities that were supposed to have ended on February the 9th? Will we be able to leave the Comunidad de Madrid during La Semana Blanca next week? Mallorca's borders are not closed. Please let me know. I'm not seeing the updates anywhere and I want to make sure before I make any travel plans. Keep up the great work. Yeah, Tessa, thanks for the comment. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. All I know is that the area that I'm living in at the moment is confined and we are not technically allowed to leave this municipality. It started about 2 weeks ago and I received a message on my phone the other day telling me that it has been extended for another week. I don't know whether it's going to end next week or not. It's going to depend on the health situation. And as we have seen in recent times, the Madrid community has closed even more places around the area. For example, a lot of health areas in the capital city and various other towns and pueblos around the Madrid community. And as I mentioned before, various autonomous communities have decided to extend their restrictions, but I'm not exactly sure which ones they are. And we also saw that the border between Portugal and Spain is going to be closed until the end of the month. And when it comes to traveling to places like the Balearic Islands or the Canary Islands, which you mentioned here are possibly open, I think that travel to those places depends on whether you can get a negative PCR test, and that is all they require to let you in. But as I said before, I'm not 100% sure, so anybody watching in those areas, please fill us in on the exact details. One here from Tamsin. A good friend just bargained down a 340k piso in Castel del Fels to 315k. Property is coming down. And another comment here on the same topic from Ben. I've been looking at the property market here in the south, the buy not rent, and have noted that there is a lot of overpricing here. I think the market is a bit stagnant at the moment. Yeah, thanks guys for the comment. We mentioned in yesterday's video that the price of rent is coming down in various cities around the country. I think they mentioned Madrid, Barcelona and Seville, but I wasn't really sure about property prices here in Spain when it comes to buying and whether they're coming down or not, or whether they're staying the same. And as Ben said there, in his particular region they're a bit stagnant, but as we saw also from Tamsin, you can pick up the odd bargain, or at least I'm presuming that 315,000 euros is a good price for property in Castel del Fels. Here in Madrid I have heard that there are a few bargains to be found as people are moving up and getting out of the centre of the cities and moving to places a little bit smaller as a result of the pandemic. But it's probably still a bit too early to tell to what extent this pandemic is going to affect property prices. I don't think it's going to be the same as back in 2008, 2009 when that was a property bubble crash, mainly due to an excess in new homes. I don't think the situation is similar, but you never know. One here from John. There was a great eye-catching headline in the UK press recently which said woman dies 4 days after COVID vaccine. Turns out she had severe health problems and was 97. I'm waiting now for the next headline saying man dies 5 minutes after AstraZeneca vaccine administered. But when you read on, you find out he was knocked down by a bus crossing the road outside the vaccination centre. Yeah, John, thanks for the comment, and you're right, there are a lot of eye-catching news articles out there at the moment talking about this type of thing, people that are passing away soon after getting the vaccine. I saw a story about a lady in Portugal, I saw a story about a man in New York, and you're talking here about a lady in the UK that died at 97 after receiving the vaccine. But as we know, there are a few people out there that are anti-vaccinations. They want to try to push this type of news. They want to show us the headline, but it is true, as you say, that when you read on, you normally find out that the vaccine was not the cause of death. But it's all about the numbers, and if you're vaccinating millions and millions of people on a daily basis, there's always going to be stories like the ones that you mentioned. But if we start seeing stories about thousands of people or tens of thousands of people dying after they receive the vaccine, then I'll start to get worried. One here from Brian. Hi Stuart, you were talking about who's next. I live in the Valencia community in a village of over 3,000. I'm 79 and no one here seems to know anyone yet who has had the jab, and the majority here are in their 80s. So we would like to know who's first. Keep up the good shows, Brian. Yeah, Brian, thanks for the comment. And as far as I know, and as we saw before, only something like 2.79% of the population have been vaccinated, and I think mainly it's been people in nursing homes and people working in nursing homes and other frontline health workers. I was talking to somebody earlier today in Galicia. His grandmother is 87 years of age and they're trying to organise a vaccine for her, but it's not easy. The AstraZeneca vaccine, as we know, is only for people between the ages of 18 and 55, so I think people in other age groups are going to have to depend on the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna vaccine, and I'm not sure if the supplies of those particular vaccines are getting through or not. So I think we're all just going to have to sit tight and wait for that SMS to come through or the telephone call from your local medical centre telling you that the vaccines have arrived and they are ready to be administered. But when that's going to happen is anybody's guess. One here from Stacey. I understand Australia have just opened a new facility to produce 40 plus million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine for Australian use in the next 3 to 4 months. I saw it reported on 60 Minutes. Yes, Stacey, thanks for the comment. That is most likely true. I saw somebody reply to this comment saying that they have an oversupply of vaccines down there in Australia. I also saw the Australian Prime Minister say that they have various suppliers of the vaccine, so things seem to be under control down there, and of course they're waiting to start the vaccination plan. And that's been the idea down there from the beginning, I imagine. Keep the virus out, keep the health situation relatively under control. If there's any outbreaks, try to act swiftly and get it under control again. Wait for the vaccines to arrive, inoculate the population, and Bob's your uncle. So let's hope things go according to plan down under. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.